What's up guys, Armada here, and in today's video we are gonna continue with our AMA series. About 2 weeks ago we did an AMA with questions from the fans, and in this one we are gonna continue. So let's get started. How did my parents react to me starting to go to video game tournaments and eventually become a professional gamer myself? So basically my first tournament, I was not even 12 years old. It was me and my older brother, Aniolis, who also was my teammate in Melee for many years. He is about 6 years older than me, so even though I was not even 12, he was, soon to be 18. So at my first tournament, I was pretty much only allowed to go since he went. And that's how it all started. And then at my third tournament, Android started going to tournaments as well, and he was like 10 at the time. So we literally entered tournaments for more than half our lives and been a part of the community. So yeah, basically like at first, like for me, it was like I was a kid, right? I didn't have like any crazy obligations. It was basically if you keep performing in school and take care of that, you can go to tournaments. That was pretty much my parents' mentality, and that was still the same thing, like through like all the way up to 9th grade and then all the way through high school as well. Pretty much the same mentality, like keep up with school, do your work there, and you can keep going to tournaments. So fair deal. And then eventually when I became a professional, I would probably say that the true mark for that was after I was signed by Alliance and truly was like living of Smash. And at that point, it's been almost 10 years since my first tournament. So I think for my parents to like accept me being a professional gamer, it was probably the easiest and most natural thing ever, since I had already entered tournaments for so many years and traveled all over Europe, all over the US, and even to like some other places like Australia and Canada and you name it. So for them it was, they more than expected it, I think. And I remember them being very happy for me when I told them I was signed by Alliance as well. So for me, it was a pretty smooth experience for sure. But honestly, if it wasn't for the fact that me and Android have an older brother that also had like a huge interest in Smash, we probably would not have been able to join the scene until way later, or at the very least not in the same capacity, since I had one friend that was like my age. He was also, early 93. He could go sometimes for one day and his dad picked him up. Maybe me and Andrew would have been able to do like something like that. Dad drops us off at the tournament early in the morning, picks us up in the evening. But even so, with like so many siblings and stuff, I'm not even sure if that would have been like a reliable route. So for us, we were very lucky, I would say. One thing I would like to experience in the US that I still have not been experiencing, honestly, the number one thing, and it's gonna maybe sound weird after so many years of being in the US, but I still have never gone to an NHL game, and I would love to go to one, especially watching Rangers with Lundqvist, playing. Not sure if that will happen. He's, towards the end of his career, he's getting older. He's been in Rangers for many years. The closest I ever was actually, ironically, in 2014. Rangers and the Kings, they played in the Stanley Cup final, and I was in New York and Los Angeles when a game happened in New York and in Los Angeles. So that was the closest I ever got. But tickets were incredibly expensive. This was quite a few months before I was signed by Lions, so I was not, money-wise, it was not the best, timeline for me. So it was not reasonable to buy tickets. Tickets were really expensive too. But even if I don't get to see, Lundqvist and Rangers play, I would still like to watch an NHL game. So, but that part I'm really gonna try to get done in 2020. So let's see what game it ends up being. What country that I have never visited would I like to visit next? That will be Japan. I've never been to Japan, or technically on an airport, I guess, but that obviously doesn't count. I sadly never got to go there for tournaments either, but this year I do plan on trying to go to Japan, me, Android, and then some friends of ours. So I'm very excited about that. Hopefully happening. Can't confirm anything as of now. But honestly, I just feel like it's such a different culture. Like as a European going to the US, for example, like of course it's like some differences here and there, but it's so many things that are similar. In Japan, it almost feels like a whole new world, and I'm also very excited to test all the food there. Like Japanese food in the US or in Europe, it's been very good. But everyone I met that had been to Japan, they have always said that this dish and this dish is like, it's so much better. It's like no coming back after. So I'm very excited to like get to experience it and test it for myself. So that will be the number one country on my list right now. After that would probably be somewhere in South America. I've never been to South America, so I don't know, maybe go and watch some football in Brazil. Would have been cool to experience the World Cup there, but it was not feasible at the time. What was the first video game I ever played? Honestly, I can't say for sure, because it actually is like old recordings of me as a kid holding a controller in my hand, being maybe barely above a year old, and you know, pressing on buttons. So I actually can't tell which was my first video game. I think on that recording, it was Mario Bros. 1. That's like one of the games. It might have been. The game I remember playing first is also like so hard, because it's like I have vague memories of like, you know, playing some of these games like Mega Man 2, Mega Man 3 was two games I grew up playing a lot. Mario Bros 3, Mario Bros 1. It was like Super Mario World. So it's like any of those games might have been like the first technically for me. But honestly, I wouldn't really know. Especially not like if you talk about like consciously, like this is the first time I like sort of remember, because it's so hard to like the timeline from that many years ago. But yeah, we had an NES and a Super Nintendo, so I grew up with these games as well. So yeah, I can't really give like one answer to the question, but if I would have to guess, it was probably Mario Bros 1. But yeah, a lot of contenders from especially NES, but Super Nintendo as well. One of my favorite memories outside of Smash. So okay, one thing that pops up into my mind was one of my birthday parties back in 2015, 2016, something like that. I rarely have those, but that year we decided to have one. So I made a event on Facebook and invited, you know, a lot of my friends, and then it was one friend who at the time lived in the United Arab Emirates, lives in Singapore now, and me and Android have visited him in both these places. And I invited him to this birthday party, more as like a gesture, like, you know, you're always welcome, like we haven't forgotten you, you know. So I invited him, like obviously not expecting him to come, since he lives, you know, that far away. And then at the day of the party, you know, more people showed up, and then at one point, Hagar, one of my closest friends, he showed up, and he was coming with some other people too, and he was like, you Adam, we have like a birthday present for you, but it's quite big, so you'll have to like help us to carry it inside. I was like, alright, this sounded a bit weird, but I didn't really think much more about it. And then I go, you know, like go outside the door, and I live in an apartment, right? So walking outside the building, and I'm opening the door, and then this friend of mine from that lives in the United Arab Emirates, he was standing there, and it was like the biggest surprise to me. I wasn't sure what to say. I was like, wait, like it was just like an overwhelming experience, but it was like tons of fun, and an amazing gift, super sweet gift. He basically flew all the way over to Sweden, and I think he was like in Sweden for like 36 hours or something. So he basically spent like equal amount of time traveling back and forth as he was like actually staying in the country. So that's like like a really good memory of mine outside of Smash tournaments. Like, I mean, it's like a lot of like good contenders, of course, but that's one that popped up in my mind when I was seeing this question. So yeah, that was amazing of him. That was amazing of him. What was my first experience in the US like? It's a pretty broad question. Like, there's a lot of things that is like, a little bit here and there difference. In the last AMA video, we mentioned stuff like, the public transport, the tap water, the tournament environment was very different. Like, I guess Europe has like a little bit more over the years, leaned towards like the US culture at tournaments with like a lot of like rooting for people, the chanting, but at the time it was not that common. Like, it happened, but it was more like during really hyped sets, but in the US it was like people screaming all the time, and I guess it was like extra much for me since I was like coming to this country far away. I was pretty much like the enemy, right? So for me, like, regardless of who I played against, friendlies or tournament, it was always like people around. I wasn't really used to it, and I was like pretty much a kid still. I was like 16 at the time. I remember playing friendlies with like Mango, Mewtwo King and stuff, and it was like so many people watching. Tournaments, it was like literally everyone in the venue was like pretty much like, please lose. And it was fun because like the more people I ended up beating along the way, at first it was more like, I remember I was down against Lucky 1-0 and people were like, it was almost like they were like, all right, he's gonna lose now, like very confident, like, let's go Lucky. And then I was bringing that set back and was like, all right, he beat Lucky, but he won't beat Shiz. And then he started kind of the same way, losing game 1, and people were like super confident that I was gonna lose to Shiz. I turn it around. The same thing as Mewtwo King, lose game 1. People are even more guaranteed, like they're so sure that I'm gonna lose that as well. And you can almost like hear a little bit desperation from the crowd, because a lot of these people probably realized that they had been shit-talking me so much before this tournament. So it was like, if I do beat Mewtwo King, they literally can't say anything. Like, if I lost to Mewtwo King at Mango, people would still be like, yeah, but he can't compete with the best players in the US. And then against Mango, it was like even more of this desperation in game 5. I remember still to this day hearing it. I can still like hear that in my head. And the desperation in game 5 when people are like, it's like, please don't lose, like, what is happening? And yeah, it was a unique experience for sure. But it was a fun one in the end, for sure. Like, even if people was like, I was the enemy, and then I didn't really like myself in that role, it was like, I just had to accept that I basically became the enemy. But I mean, people still, after that tournament especially, they gave me a lot of respect. So that's all I can ask for. So still very cool. And I mean, we made friends along the way, people we met at the first Genesis, people that are also like maybe not like super well known in the Smash scene or anything, but that we still like, to this day talk to. So it was a good experience all around. And I mean, if it wasn't for, a tournament as fantastic as Genesis 1, who knows if I would have continued, traveling to Smash. A lot of things just worked out really good with that trip. We didn't really do too much that first trip to the US besides the tournament. I was like just very motivated to like perform. I remember really feeling that since Europe's top player had never been in the US before, it was like so much expectations. It was like the Europeans really expected me to do great. For them it was like, oh, you can't like get lower than 5th. Like if I get lowered in 5th, they would have been like disappointed pretty much. And then it was like the other side, the US, that was like, well, you will at best get top 32, probably not even top 64. So I was like, it was a lot of pressure for a 16-year-old little kid to handle, but I mean, it all turned out pretty good. So yeah, after Genesis, I was just so excited to go back to the US and like experience like especially the tournament environment again. So it was a good time. Alright guys, that was it for this AMA. We had a lot of wonderful questions. Not all of them could make the cut for this video, but if you didn't get your question responded to in this one, maybe it will appear in the next one. And if you still haven't asked a question to potentially be featured in this series, please make sure to, in the comments below, ask your question. And if you're lucky, it will appear in the next AMA video. And also, if you liked the video, please make sure to subscribe, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace.